Well, good evening, everybody. While we're potentially waiting for some others to join us, we'll go ahead and get started. I am very excited to see everybody this evening and appreciate you giving of a Wednesday night to be here to learn about the audit process. I am Sara Philo. I am the CFO for the diocese, and I have, just as an introduction for myself, for some of you that might not know me very well yet, I've been on staff, started in Legacy Eastern, will be 8 years on June 1st. So I'm very excited to hit that anniversary and to have been working with you all for these past 8 years. I am very excited to share with you tonight our audit policy and to answer any questions that you have. How I think we'll do this tonight is I have a presentation for you, which I will run through. Shouldn't take super long, and then we can open the floor for questions. I think that'll be the easiest way to go about it with so many here tonight. If you have particular questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat. I have Mark Sullivan, our diocesan office administrator, is here helping me tonight. So between the two of us, we'll attempt to monitor the chat, and after we open for questions, if you have additional questions, you can use the raise hand function and I'll be able to see you in the queue with a question, and we'll go from there and see how that goes. I know some of our reviewers are here tonight. I was going to try to introduce, but it's a very full room. So I'll try to do my best, but also because I can see his face. Father Derek Quinn is here with us this evening. He is our assistant treasurer and acting treasurer, while Reverend Jared Kramer is on sabbatical. So he'll also be here to help assist me in answering any questions you all might have or fill in gaps that hopefully I didn't miss anything in the presentation, but we'll see. So, when we get to, one of the slides is the list of our reviewers. If any of our reviewers are here this evening, when we get to that slide, if you want to use your raise hand function, I can point you out. That might be the easiest way to do that. I can see a few of you, and I'm glad you're all here tonight. So with that, I'm going to attempt to share my slideshow. Pray for me, and we'll get. And actually, why don't we open with a bit of prayer? I'm gonna just give a quick little prayer, and then we'll begin. The Lord be with you. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this evening, for these members of our church who are here this evening, who care so deeply for our parishes, for our diocese, who are giving up their evening to learn about audit processes and good financial practices for our churches to do your work, steward our resources and our care of each other. I pray that you bless each person that is here and every person in our diocese and those that we touch on a daily basis. Help us to have a good meeting tonight, ask good questions, and just be together. In your name, amen. Okay, so let me share my screen and start the slideshow. And I'm hoping everybody can see that. And okay, great. So I have a little surprise for you. There's going to be one little thing that pops up on the screen. My son helped me do some editing up of the presentation and do my transitions, and he gave us a little emoji here. So I hope you'll indulge me for a moment. Some little smiling money. So I welcome you to the audit procedures for parishes. For some of you in the Diocese of Legacy Eastern, some of this will look familiar. In Western Michigan, your Legacy Diocese there, some of this will look a little familiar as well, but slightly different. So we've tried to really put a good policy together from the best of both worlds and from the business manual from the wider church. So why are audits required? First, they're required by the canon of the wider church, of the Episcopal Church. We want to ensure good financial statements, everything's being presented fairly and accurately. I think a piece that is really good to keep in mind is it not only protects the church and its finances, but those of you who work on the church financials. It's a good way to ensure that everything is working well and that everybody is protected. It helps protect the church leadership from liability of things that might be going wrong that we're not discovering. It's not foolproof, but it's a good step in that direction. And it creates transparency and trust among church members, those who give, and can help increase your donor confidence and your stewardship. So who has to have an audit? Congregations, so any of our parishes within the diocese, any emerging communities of faith. This is a new area, I think, for some of us in our new canons. Seasonal chapels are now also part of this group. Congregations in convent relationships and any auxiliary affiliates that might be in any of these organizations. And who might that be? That might be ECW. If any of you have an ECW group that works with you, you help steward their finances, any of those kinds of things. For some of you, this will look familiar again. For some, this might be new. Who can perform the audit? Always an independent CPA or CPA firm is a great choice and can be done anytime. Any parish is welcome to use a CPA firm anytime. Or you also can choose an audit committee. And what is a little different for some of you in this is the committee needs to be made up of one diocesan approved financial reviewer who will meet shortly or talk about shortly. And for those of you from the Legacy Eastern Diocese, you're very familiar with that procedure and how that works. Committees, I think Legacy Western, you all are a little bit more familiar with committees. So your committee should be one diocesan approved financial reviewer, your treasurer, if you have one, you should have one, a bookkeeper, if you have one, and your rector or priest in charge, a senior warden, and any other person your vestry might elect to be on this committee. And your vestry or your board should select which way you're going to go if you're going to do a CPA audit or a committee audit based on the requirements that we're going to talk about shortly. And that should be done before you obviously proceed with hiring one or the other, a CPA, or contacting your committee. Diocesan approved financial reviewers are reviewers that are vetted and approved by diocesan council, and this list of wonderful people have all been approved by diocesan council. I know I've saw some of these faces here today, and I'd love to introduce you, or you can use your raise hand. But if you're, I see Martha's here. Wonderful. Thank you, Martha Porter. I'm pretty sure I saw Reverend Luke Crusoe is here this evening. I see Val Ambrose. Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. I don't know if you all can see these faces with the large group, but these are all very well qualified individuals from around our parish, our diocese, who will serve you well. And if your parish is doing the committee audit, you all will select somebody from this list, and one of the resources that you'll get after this meeting is this list of reviewers with their contact information and their general vicinity, so that you can reach out and request that they serve your parish. So from the policy manual that you all received as part of this Zoom, and you'll receive after as well, this is a guide to the requirements of which way you likely should go in selecting either a CPA or an audit committee. And it is based on your annual revenue or your total investments, or a combination of the two. So if you're in this group of obviously we hope you're not at zero, but up to 50,000, you can choose to do a CPA audit if you'd like, or you can do your committee audit. And in this group, you may use the same financial reviewer for 5 consecutive years, and then you need to have somebody different rotate in onto your committee. If you're in the $50,000 to $500,000 range of annual revenue or total investments, again, you can choose CPA or audit committee. If you're going with the committee, you may use the same financial reviewer, diocesan approved financial reviewer, up to 3 consecutive years, and then you need to call a new one to rotate in. And if you're in the 500,000 and above, it's recommended that you do a CPA audit annually, but we all understand that that's expensive, and can sometimes be a little bit difficult to do. So you are also able to do a committee audit, but you must do a CPA audit every 3 years, every third year. So those and one of the requirements is if your parish is calling a new rector, a CPA audit should be done before that rector is called. I know that we've had this question in the past, and I'll address this right now, where we've had some parishes in recent time, in the past year or two, who've called rectors who didn't know that this is a new policy. And I think that wasn't always made clear. So if you are in a parish where a rector has been called and a CPA audit wasn't done, and you have questions about that, please reach out to me or Derek, and we can help determine if anything needs to be done about that. Things that will be included in your audit, just so you're aware, basically any checking account or bank account that you have should be included, should be looked at, including statements, reconciliations. This would include if you have a separate checking account for your general funds, if you have an account for your ECW or Altar Guild, if you any bank account that you have, also savings accounts and investment accounts, all of those will be included in your audit, and statements and reconciliations should be provided to your reviewer in your committee. Credit card statements, your treasurer's reports or financial statements that are provided to your vestry, whether it's monthly or quarterly or however those are done, be prepared to provide those. Your annual report from your annual meeting for the year being audited, any loan statements that you might have if you have any loans, your asset list of purchases and disposals. And I did have somebody ask me about this. So what that would mean or include would be if you bought if you bought new computers or equipment or furniture, larger items that would need to be listed on your fixed assets. That's what that would be, in purchases and disposals, so that you can update your fixed assets appropriately. All of your W-2s or 1099s that were provided for any employees or contractors would be included. Your vestry meeting minutes, property inventory. I had a question about this as well. This would be related to the auditor or the reviewers ensuring that you have things listed correctly on your both insurance policy and on your fixed assets on your balance sheet. I don't know that you need to have a list of every single thing in the parish, but it might be something that the reviewer will ask you to make sure that appropriate things are listed appropriately on your financial statements. If you have an investment policy for your investment or endowment accounts, you'll want to have that ready. If you have a gift acceptance policy, some of these things you might not have, and that's okay, but you might get asked about it. So a gift acceptance policy would be if you have a specific policy on how your parish can receive donations or gifts, that's what that would be. Any endowment or trust documents that you have that list how whether the endowments or trusts are restricted, in any way so that the reviewers can make sure that, again, those are listed appropriately with the proper donor or board restrictions related to them. Employee files, I don't believe the reviewers will necessarily look at every one of your employee files in the sense of everything that's in them, but if that you might need to show, obviously you'll need to show your W-2 and 1099s, and they may have questions to make sure that you've gathered the proper tax forms to withhold the right amounts, those types of things. So just be prepared that there may be some information from the employee files that you'll need to provide. Your insurance policies, to be sure that those are up to date, timely, and include the right requirements. And then you'll want to have your procure report that was filed for the audit year available also. And why am I not advancing? There we go. Other requirements and considerations I wanted to point out is, for those of you that this might be a new thing, financial reviewers, when you hire one of our diocesan approved financial reviewers for your audit committee, please be aware that they are to be compensated $200 plus travel to your parish, which would be the standard IRS mileage rate. And if so, I want to caution you to be prepared for your audit based on the policy. There's a list in audit policy that goes through some of the things that I just talked about that you'll want to have ready for the reviewer when they get there, so that they can your committee can complete the work appropriately. If that's unable to happen and the reviewer maybe has to come back out, they are to be compensated for each visit to the church. So just be aware of that. The audit policy and the requirements in the checklist come from the manual of business methods from the wider church, from the Episcopal Church, and that is always a good guide to go back to when looking at your policies and things that are required in the audit. And the checklist is included in the policy and also comes from the manual. What to do when you're done. So when your audit committee is done and your audit is complete, it should, I didn't put this on the slide, but your reviewer and your committee should provide a copy to you that you'll provide to your vestry for approval. And then once the final report is done and the vestry has approved, it is due within 30 days of the completion of the audit to the treasurer, but through me. So what you'll want to do is send that report. You can mail it to me at the finance office in Saginaw, and the address is there, or you're welcome to email it to me. A lot of times your reviewer will send it to me directly, and that's fine. It can come from either the reviewer or from the parish. And if your review committee found anything that needs to be corrected or anything that you've missed that you need to start adding to your policies or anything, whatever comes out of the audit, be prepared to work on those to get whatever those recommendations are done. And when your report is submitted to our office, I will review it. Father Derek will get a copy, and we'll look it over. If there's anything that we notice that flags, or we'll reach out and with any questions or any need or any assistance that you might need in completing any recommendations. So that was kind of fast and furious. I hope I didn't talk too fast. I tend to do that when I'm nervous. So I appreciate you all listening. I see some questions in the chat. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see you all, and I'm happy to entertain any questions that you might have at this point. And let's see if I can see the chat. We'll start there. And if your question's not in the chat, and you have one you want to say verbally, if you can, it's helpful to use the raise hand function, because then you'll pop up on my screen in the front, and I'll be able to see you in line. Okay. All right, friends, let's see. Just to get to the chat. Oh, I'm hearing from people who lost sound. I apologize for that. If there was something you didn't hear, please feel free to raise your hand, or if a question potentially came up. The recording will also be available and will be sent out. So if potentially you lost some sound and missed something, you're welcome to also rewatch the
Sarah,
edits.
the sound went away, but it came back.
Great. Okay, good. Good. Thank you. I believe, Father Dirk, this may be a question I need your assistance on. We have a question in the chat that says, does the clock start this year for the 3 or 5 year review? Since this is technically a new policy this year, would this be the start of like your year one for that 3 year or 5 year?
Yes.
Or do we, okay,
So, because we are a new diocese with new policies, not that what happened before isn't important, but it does not count. So, yes, any of those kinds of clocks start with this year's audit. So, the 2025 books being audited.
thank you. I see a question about how the rector's discretionary count in the audit. So the rector's discretionary fund should be part of your audit. It should be something that they look at. The auditor and or committee doesn't necessarily and probably shouldn't look at the specific gifts that were given or donations out of that. But what they need to be looking at is it being accounted for appropriately within the accounting system? Are there checks and balances still there? Are the donations coming in and the donations going out of the fund being recorded appropriately within the books to ensure that there isn't any fraud happening within the discretionary fund, that type of thing. Does that cover it? Father Derek, yeah, he's shaking his head. Yes. Okay. So yeah, so I know there's always a question because the discretionary fund generally is more of a confidential type thing of who they're giving it to, and that's fine. But we just need to ensure that everything is being recorded appropriately within the finances, whether it's its own separate checkbook or just part of your general financial statements. That's what they'll be looking for. I see a question about, and I've had this question in the past. If you have an endowment or an investment that you receive don't funds from or draws from, but it isn't actually your fund, those gifts or the draws that you receive, the income you receive should be recorded. The fund itself might not be, depending on how the specific terms of the fund are. And that is something that I would say, if you're unsure, if you have a fund like that, we have one at the diocese like that. It is, we get the income from it, but the endowment is not actually our endowment. We get the income. So it's in it, but we have one that is. So that is something I would suggest you talk with your specific reviewers about. And if there's questions, then, we can address those on a one-on-one. But generally, if it is not technically your fund, it is managed somewhere else and you're only getting income from that, record the income.
Right.
If it is your specific, if it is your fund, it's just not managed by you, then you would want that to be on your balance sheet. So it might depend on your specific situation, which we can talk about if you or your reviewers are unsure how to handle that. I see Father Dirk. Thank you, Father Dirk, for shaking your head. I appreciate that. Hal, would you like to ask your question? I see your hand up before I continue through the chat.
Yeah, I put it up. Sarah, thank you. I put it up before.
Sure.
How, in this counting system, how are we going to handle capital, non-operational revenue and expenses, capital and outreach?
Yeah, great question. So generally the rule is if you are receiving funds that are non-operating, you have a capital campaign, you're receiving funds for that, that would be a non-operating income. And any expenses you pay out of that would be non-operating expenses. One thing I don't love is the parochial report in its former form. And I see Dirk because he understands the parochial report in its former form really, I think, did a good job of asking for those breakdowns so that we in the diocesan office know what is truly your operating versus your non-operating, both income and expense. They've changed that a little bit, so I wouldn't worry too much about how, if at all that's where the concern is from, how the procurator report is answering that or asking that, because we're going to ask more directed questions. But for your financial statements and the way that you present things at your parish is if you are so if you have endowments and you're taking a draw every year and you're bringing in any part of it that is for your operations, just to offset your operating of the church, that is considered operating income. If you are bringing in draws from investments that are for things like outreach, you're giving it to a committee to give out to the needy, something like that, that is non-operating income. And then what you spend it on in either of those, in that case, would also be non-operating expense. But again, if you're bringing it in and you're using it to help run the church, offset, any of the normal operating expenses, your payroll, your lighting bill, those kinds of things, that is operating income and should be reported as such.
Should we separate it? Should there be non?
I would, yeah. I mean, in that sense, yes, your book should be set up to have a section of operating income and non-operating income, and again, operating expenses and non-operating expenses. That helps you all see specifically what you're spending to truly operate the church, both income and expense, and what you're using in other ways, either outreach or large capital expenses, those types of things. And you want to separate those out. If you have questions about how to do that, reach out to me anytime. I'm happy to help you walk through how to set those up on your books if they aren't done that way. But yeah, you always want to, as much as you can, well, really you should do it always, to keep your operating and your non-operating, both income and expenses, separately.
Sarah, let me ask one other quick thing, then I'll keep quiet. How do we account for our building and land in this audit procedure?
Sure. So that should be, you should have a fixed asset portion of your balance sheet or statement of financial position, whatever you might call it, out of your accounting system, that lists the building and the land, and potentially any of your equipment, your computers, your furniture, all of those things should be also listed in your fixed asset section on your financial statements. And if you're if those aren't listed and you're unsure how to value them, that is something that your reviewer should be able to help you with, or we can. Usually your building and your land are booked at the value when you got them. But if your church is 200 years old, you might not know. And so a lot of times in that case, you would use the insured value. And I've had this question a lot in the past, is do you change that every year based on the insured value? And the answer is no. Once it goes on your books, it goes on your books as is. The only thing that might change is your depreciation of like your equipment or things over time. But you don't want to change your balance sheet based on insured value every year. It should be whatever the value was when you obtained it until you dispose of it. And obviously the building you're not going to dispose of, hopefully. So
yeah. Okay.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Go ahead. Do you have another? Are you good, Hal?
I'm fine for now. I'm away.
Great.
I could keep going, but I'm away.
That's okay. I appreciate that. I'm gonna go ahead and keep going through the chat. I don't see any other hands at this moment, so I'll keep going through the chat questions. Yes, so will we be receiving this list of requirements? Yes. So you'll get my slide deck and the recording from this after the meeting, and then you'll also get a list of the approved financial reviewers, like I said, with their contact information, so that you all have that and can determine who you might want to call to come out. And you'll also get the audit policy, and I will provide the checklist in Word format so that your reviewers don't have to try to handwrite in a PDF. You can type in it also. So you'll get all of those resources after the session. Yep. Oh, let's see. Okay. So, oh, I don't think I put that in there. I'm very sorry. So the audits are required due by September 1st every year, and that is by National Church. I know we're supposed to call it wider church now. My apologies. By Episcopal Church canon rule.
Yeah,
I do believe we have, though, if you are having issues, getting a CPA firm or getting your reviewer to come out, or there's some other potential issue that might delay that. I believe this is correct. Father Derek, correct me if I'm wrong. You are welcome to reach out to my office and request an extension on a case-by-case basis, and we can talk through what might be going on and potentially give you an extension past that, as long as you reach out to the office to let us know.
Absolutely. Just filing your taxes. The deadline is the deadline, but if you need an extension, file that extension by the deadline and we will consider it.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Let's see. I see the land. Let's see. Will you be publishing a proposed individual parish schedule so reviewers are not overwhelmed at the end of year 3 and 5? Lowell, would you mind unmuting? And I want to make sure I'm understanding your question appropriately. Are you asking if I'll send out when you must switch your
The question
review?
I was asking is, I have not gone through this process. My instinct is us humans tend to wait for the last month or so, and then there's a mad rush for resources like a parish auditor. And I was just
Gotcha.
wondering, was there some mechanism to encourage us individual parishes not to wait
Yeah,
and then overwhelm
gotcha.
the reviewers?
Great question. Yes. So, in a normal year, this year, where, the new process is going out. So obviously I would have loved to have had this conversation a month or two ago or even sooner. But yes, so come probably in late July, early August, we'll be monitoring the reviews that are coming in, and we'll send out a midsummer reminder to please schedule your financial review. Make sure that you're working through that to have it submitted by the deadline, or reaching out to my office. And then in the years to come, generally what I'll do is you'll receive a winter reminder earlier in the year to remember that the audit process is coming. Here are our reviewers for the year. We'll make sure that we've got a good list of updated reviewers to make sure everyone's still participating before we send that out to you. And then again, we'll do spring and summer reminders. And as we get closer to the September 1 deadline, if we're seeing that there are still parishes that haven't submitted a review and haven't reached out, and I'm hearing from reviewers that they haven't heard from particular parishes, I will likely do a one-on-one call just to check in and make sure, so that it's I know for a lot of us this is a little bit new, and it's a new year, it's a new policy. So we'll be here to assist you in any way that we can. Yes. So the question in the chat is, will there be a general addresses so that you don't call them both? Yes. So generally what the list that we've sent in the past will have their region, so where in the state they are. So, if you're down in Lansing, you might not want to call, someone from Sheboygan, or vice versa. So we'll have the general geographical area for you, so you can try to select a reviewer that's as close to you as possible. And just to keep in mind for both our reviewers that are on the call and also for all your parishes that will be calling them. It's really going to be what works both for their schedule and your schedule. You will work that out when you call them. And if you're having trouble finding one that's available or reaching out, please let me know and we'll do what we can with this. And then the comment is, I would think the CPAs or financial reviewers should keep everything confidential. That's true. Your financial reviewer should not discuss anything about your parish or your CPA outside of your parish, except with my office or the treasurer. That is not something that should, and I don't have any reason to believe any of our approved financial reviewers would act in any other way. They're very capable and responsible and trustworthy. So if, obviously if we find out, we would deal with that, but yes, whatever happens within your committee and with your financial reviewer CPA should remain confidential, except for obviously sharing with, diocesan office and the treasurer, and a bishop when we have one at some point, any of the results. I don't know that we'll share the transcription, but you'll definitely get a link to the video. But I don't do the tech end of things, so I'm gonna say what I think happens and trust that our communication director, when this happens, she'll send you all of the appropriate things with all of the links and materials involved. Okay. I have someone's asking, maybe I missed it, but I do not see a mention of exchange audits between parishes. I think that was how Legacy Western, I think you could have come in, and I'm not as familiar with that, so I see some nodding of the heads, but I believe that was how audits were done, was to have audit committees from sharing parishes to help each other do audits. This is the new policy, so we don't do that any longer. Your committee will be made up of a financial reviewer and then the people from your parish. If that answers that question, I hope. Ben, feel free to unmute and clarify if I didn't get that right.
Well, is that excluded, specifically excluded?
Yes, I mean, yes. Because this is the new policy, this is how it will need to be done going forward. So you wouldn't call a committee from another church to come in and do your audit. You would use the committee format that's in the policy now. Is that?
Even if there was a reviewer on each one. I would assume that a reviewer would be needed on each one. But I can see how, I guess, the reviewer brings that independence.
Yeah, correct. That is the idea, that the financial review, that piece of it, having the diocesan approved financial reviewer, is bringing that independence. It is part of the requirement for them to serve as a financial reviewer is we have them trained by our CPA firm, which happens to be the diocesan auditor, so that they're getting trained to do these audits. They're bringing an independence that's outside of your parish to the group to work with those from your parish.
Well, certainly using a parish committee plus someone that's only $200 a day is a lot better than a CPA audit. It's easily $8,000, and
it can be, yeah.
Yes, and I've always been of the thinking, and I have auditing training and background. I'm not a CPA, but people get CPA build up in their mind so much, it's overkill. And in most cases, it's overkill. So overall, this looks good.
Good. Thank you. There's a question about if you're in a covenant. Yes, if you have a covenant, if the covenant has its own financial system or banking accounts, that should be also included. If for those of you in that situation, Dawn, I see your question. Feel free to call me. We'll talk through it to make sure that you're getting that situated appropriately. Derek, do you have anything to add to that? Does that make sense?
Right. It's one of those, all of the money has to be audited. So if you're in a covenant, there's got to be some mechanism to make sure that it gets on at least one of the two parishes' audits. Or it's possible that the whole covenant could be audited together. So we would work that out with you.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, because obviously a lot of the things wouldn't apply. We don't have property. We don't have,
Correct.
yeah. So,
Yeah. And again, any of those things that I mentioned or that are in the policy, if your church doesn't have it, then your auditor, your financial reviewer will likely ask just to be sure if it's not something that you should have, or those types of things to make sure that nothing's missing. But if you don't have some of those things, obviously you don't have property, you don't have property. So yeah.
so lucky me, I get to do it twice.
Or include it with I'm very familiar. Yeah. But yes, that was a great question. Thank you.
Sarah, I just want to make sure you don't miss a question because I've seen it posted a couple of times.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Someone asked, can a CPA or a certified internal auditor apply to be added to the list or be used?
Oh, thank you. I did miss it. Yes.
Interestingly, a certified internal auditor, while that is exactly what they do, the name is on the tin. The Episcopal Church's Manual for Business Methods does not mention or recognize a certified internal auditor, and so that's why it's not listed in our policy. They are probably very much qualified, but unfortunately, they don't count as a CPA, and so unless they also happen to be a CPA. And so, unfortunately, right now at least, that does not qualify. They could be a member of the internal audit team, but they wouldn't be able to independently do an audit like a CPA.
Great. Thanks for catching that. I'm sorry I missed that. Betsy, I see your question about volunteering to be a reviewer. Reach out to me and I will get you that information and we can talk, and would love to potentially have you as part of the team. So feel free
Great.
to
I
either
wasn't,
call or email me.
yeah, I
Go ahead,
wasn't
sorry.
referring to auditor. Ben came back and said you can't audit. I didn't
Oh.
mean a CPA or CIA. I meant someone who is trained to be a reviewer in the off years.
Yes. So I have to get your information, and you'll have to be approved by Diocese Council. So I'm happy to have that conversation with you and potentially
Great.
get you on that list. Yep.
I'll send that to you. Thank you, Sarah.
Great. Thank you. Sure. Yep. Ron, I see your question also. Feel free to also reach out to me. We've got a large diocese, a lot of area now, so I appreciate anyone who is interested in filling this really vital role for our diocese. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I thought it was funny because I've actually done audits for other churches that
Great.
are not in our denomination. So,
oh, wonderful. Great. Good. I'm looking forward to having you potentially serve. Okay, let's see. Where are we at? Okay, the MBA. MBA has little to do with auditing, CPA or CIA. The church, I'm not, is that, I don't know if I need to address that. I see someone's Daniel, your comment there. If you have a particular question about that, feel free to unmute. So I see a question, what we expect parishes to need to spend on a CPA audit. I don't think we have an expectation. We don't really control that, unfortunately. We understand that is a great expense, which is why we, really try to allow for these committee audits and financial reviews in between, and to have the CPA audits really when they're needed versus unnecessarily trying to require them at all times, because we know they are quite an expense. So unfortunately, I can't really answer that question. There's no expectation or requirement. It's unfortunately really just what the cost would be. If you have potential questions about that, or also I will also say that if your parish is in a position where you are in need of a CPA audit, you've got a new rector coming, or you're at that one of those benchmark years where you have to have one and cost is an issue, always please reach out to my office or to Father Derek, and we will do what we can to potentially see if there, is assistance for that. We definitely don't want any of the parishes to be struggling to meet these requirements. They're very important. It needs to be done for the health of, the parishes, for all of you. And so, whatever we can do to assist, we'll definitely do what we can. So please always reach out with any concerns or needs you might have. And I see a question, how long does an average review take? So again, the timing of how long your review might last really depends on your system, how large your financial system might be. If you're a smaller parish with a smaller general ledger, it might not take as long if you've got a smaller parish with few to no employees. It really just depends on your system, and I unfortunately can't necessarily answer that question, but I would guess, and some of our financial reviewers that are on here have done this in the past might have a better idea of how long it generally takes them to do this, but I'm guessing half a day to a day, potentially at a minimum. I don't know that the reviewers generally have to go out more than once, but it will depend on your system, and that'll be something that you'll just need to work out with your reviewer. And hopefully they don't have to spend a lot of time there. But again, also if they're finding a lot of things that they need to help you with, that might take longer. So unfortunately, I don't really have a great answer for exactly how long that will take. And I see a question about, is there money to help small parishes pay for these? Yeah, I can't make any promises or statements as to any of those particular figures in this moment, but yes, we again are always here to assist if we can. I know your council and your finance committee, we want to help make these things happen. So reaching out, having these conversations, we're always potentially here to do what we can to assist, to help ensure that you're able to do your audits and your reviews, and in whatever form that is. Is the checklist used whether it's an audit done by a CPA or audit committee? Generally, yes. Your CPA auditor will have a process for how that specific CPA audit is done, but I would definitely give them the checklist so that they understand what the requirements within both the diocesan policy and from the Episcopal Church within the business manual. And then it will be really helpful for them if they haven't seen that before to fully understand what's required, what is asked, and so that they're ensuring generally they're going to hit all of the same types of things. But I would imagine that they would want to see that checklist to make sure that they're understanding what is being asked, and that they're covering all of those things in the same way. Their report might come out and look different. They are not required to use the checklist in that sense. So if they have a particular specific CPA, audit report that they use, that's fine, as long as they're auditing all of the same things that are required within the policy, if that makes sense. There's a question about whether the diocese or the wider church provide or recommend a particular software program for church accounting, especially for the smaller congregations. So no, that we don't. And I don't think the wider, because again, this is going to go back to your particular parish and the size of your parish, the size of your financial system, what you might need. It might vary. What a very large church with a lot of endowments will need a very potentially different system than a small, a smaller parish that has, a different financial outlook. So we don't require that because what is needed for some of those larger parishes really is unnecessary for some of the smaller parishes who have just a smaller system, and the cost of a larger accounting software really would be unnecessary for you. So something like QuickBooks would be maybe fine for what you have, versus, if we have a large parish that needs some really complicated fund accounting. So I'm always, again, if you have questions about what system you're on, if you're not on an electronic accounting system yet, and how to transition to that, please reach out. I'm happy to help you make those decisions, or potentially make those transitions as needed, or to determine if maybe you need something a little different. That's what we're here for. So again, please reach out, let me know, and I'm happy to talk through that with you. Question about if my office has CPA contacts. I do have some. They've been more and more difficult to find in the last several years, really since COVID, but I'm trying to build a list. So yes, if you're in that category and you need a CPA audit for some reason and you're not sure who to reach out to, please let me know, and I can give you some potential names to work with. Question about what a covenant is. So I don't know, we want to get into necessarily all of that tonight, but so there are some parishes who work together, and I'm in a very generalized explanation, and Dawn, please feel free to jump in because you do the covenant, but we have a couple of situations where we have two parishes that might work together, and so the covenant is sort of, in a way, the link between them, and that helps do the financials for the two together. Dawn, do you want to maybe explain that a little bit more in your context?
Yeah, when we started, neither St. Andrews or St. Mary's could afford a priest, so we entered into a formal written agreement to hire a priest to cover both churches. We set up a separate checking account to do payroll and some of the things that would apply to both of them.
So each parish still has its own set of financials for the things it does independently, but the things that it shares, it has a financial system for that, correct?
Yes, and I just happened, I got asked to do because I had accounting background, I got asked to do the covenant stuff too.
Yeah. So we have a couple of those. They're not, there's not a ton of them at this point, but in our new world, that may become more of a thing. I don't want to say too much, but be aware it's a thing. If you have questions about it, again, please reach out. We're always here to answer any questions or explore things as your situation might develop.
And I know those of us in the Central Michigan Episcopal Covenant, which is what we're called, would be glad to answer any questions too.
Great. Thanks, Dawn. Okay. I see a question about how flexible will the diocese be as parishes ramp up, provide this expanded data? How can you, I want to make sure I'm understanding your question appropriately. Would you mind unmuting and giving me a little more context so I can?
Well, in comparison to the audits that we have done over the last several years, the amount of documentation is significantly expanded in the current recommendations. And I know it's effective this year, but a lot of churches may take some time to be able to accurately provide all of the detail, such as video, documentation of your furnishings and assets, and all these things that may or may not have been done in many parishes. And I'm just curious as to the flexibility that the diocese has as people ramp up. I don't disagree with the goal at all. I just think getting from A to B is not a little step. It may be a big step for lots of people.
Yeah. So I heard things in there. So just to be clear, for your financial review, you don't necessarily have to create a video of all of your inventory. That's more of an insurance thing. We just want to make sure what the auditors might, or the reviewer might ask you, is if they see your fixed asset number and they know, they might want to confirm that you've got everything listed appropriately. But and I will say, I would hope that this isn't all that much more than what's done in the past, because this checklist, I believe, really was done by both dioceses in the past, and it's been what's been required by the national church since I've been on staff. But yes, so again, the deadline is still September 1, but if there is issue because of any changes from what you're used to or the amount that needs to be done, again, reach out to my office and we can discuss, an
Well, it may,
extension.
yeah. Well, Sarah, that's not maybe the issue.
Okay,
Having
sure.
read through the document twice now,
Mhm.
there are things that we have not had to provide that are there listed to be provided,
Okay.
and that's
Yeah.
where I'm coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we realize this is somewhat new and there may be some changes that everybody's experiencing, some timing issues. So,
That's what my question was. How
yeah, yeah.
flexible are, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
obviously, as Father Derek and I both have said, the deadline is September 1. It is by national church canon, so it's the deadline. But again, we are here to work with the parishes to ensure that you all are able to do this and do it correctly. And that's, I think in my estimation, and Father Derek, please speak up, but the important thing. But yes.
Yeah, and I just want to make clear the point of the audit is not to wag a finger at any. I mean, I'm the
Yeah.
rector of St. Paul's Elk Rapids, and I can guarantee you, having helped craft this policy that got written, my church isn't fully compliant with it either. The point is to identify that and then be able to put some effort into working towards it. And the hope is that year after year, as we do these audits, we are all moving towards having good internal controls, that we're having good financial practices and being good stewards. So even if we identify a whole bunch of stuff at this particular audit that needs to be changed, great. Start working on that and plug away on it.
Yeah.
Father, I totally agree. But that point of clarification was the reason for my question. When
Yep.
I went through it, I think we are probably at least 80-85% compliant. But there are lots of things that we're going to have to do that we haven't done before. And
Exactly.
yeah, that's my point.
Gotcha.
Yep,
Great.
precisely.
Thank you all. I'm glad we got there. Yeah. Yeah. And again, we are here. I mean, this is what the diocesan staff and the leadership is here is to assist you all. So I hope that you all understand that we're here to work with you, help you all have good practices in place and able to do your mission and ministry. That's what we're here for. So I see there's just a few more questions. So let's see if I can run through them. Trace, I see your question about do church windows have components for use in audits? I'm not sure what that means. Yeah, I want to make sure I'm answering correctly if you're still on the call. Maybe not.
This is the first year I've used church windows as the treasurer of the church. Mainly, right now I'm just using it to document the income. And so I don't know what else is available on church windows, but there was a question about, can we use other kinds of
Gotcha. Okay.
Is
Is
like
that
that.
just a
So
software?
is
I'm sorry.
this
Okay.
one have
Gotcha.
that kind of program that maybe is there and I haven't even uncovered it yet?
Got you. Okay. So that's the accounting software you're using, is that? Okay, great. So I
Yeah.
hadn't heard of it before, so I just want to make sure I was understanding. Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm not familiar with that software. So let me do a little research, and I will see, and then maybe you and I can talk and see what you might need to do, or does that make sense? Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Unless Derek, are you familiar, Father Derek, with that? No. Okay.
I'm aware of it, but I have never had the privilege of using it, so I don't
Oh,
know.
yeah, I haven't either.
Really? I thought it was something that our church always used.
Yeah. I'm learning. There are more and more softwares out there that I have not encountered before. So, but yeah, I'm happy to look into that and see what we can do to make sure you've got it the way that you need to have it.
because I think we ordered it through the diocese and are paying for the use of it, because you can also, you don't have to have it at the office computer. We can now do it remotely.
Oh, fascinating. Okay. Yeah, and it may be something that was there prior to my tenure. I'm not sure. So, but again, I'm happy to look into it and see what we can do to assist.
Okay.
Okay. Hal has a question about what software other than QuickBooks does the diocese recognize, accept, or recommend? Really, I don't know that we have any particular requirement. I don't know that there's a software we wouldn't accept. Really the important thing is the software that you're using produce the financial statements. Are you able to account for all of your things appropriately and track your funds the way that you should? And is it producing so that your vestry knows, that they're looking at accurate and fair statements. That's really the key. I mean, if you've got a software that's doing that, that's great. And if you have concerns about whether your software is able to do that, again, like potentially like Joyce asked, then we're happy to assist with that if we can.
Yeah, we're using QuickBooks, and it works okay, although there are some quirks to QuickBooks.
I would agree.
But I'm aware of other churches that use something called ACS.
Yep, that's what we use at the diocese.
You use ACS at the diocese?
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah, in ACS is a versus QuickBooks. What I will say is, QuickBooks, if you have more complicated or you need a more in-depth fund accounting like we do at the diocese, the level that we do, QuickBooks really doesn't work well. It's not made for that. I don't love it. I wouldn't, I wouldn't particularly recommend it for the larger churches who have some of those more complicated accounting systems. Others might disagree with me, but that's my use of it. Also, I will say that a program like ACS, though it can do some of that more complicated and in-depth fund accounting, can be quite pricey. So it might price out some of, and some of the parishes just might not need that level of, and QuickBooks, might work fine. And there are other options out there also for, there's any myriad of.
Sarah, this might be an area where the diocese could be incredibly helpful to the parishes. To come up with 2 or 3 different levels of complexity, but 2 or 3 softwares that you would recommend and be able to help people work through.
And we do a bit of that now. And we work in the diocesan office to, and actually our staff right now is doing some more in-depth training on QuickBooks so that we are able to help more with some of that in a more in-depth way. But yes, and again, some of it will come down to understanding each parish's exact needs to help them particularly find out what software might work for them. But again, we try, and correct me if I'm wrong, Father Derek, but we try not to get so granular that we're like, you only have to use a particular thing, because there might be something that works really well for a parish, and we certainly wouldn't want to necessarily be so stringent on some of those things, as long as, again, it's producing the right kind of financial statements and it works and is within a price range that a particular parish might be able to afford. But yes, I hear what you're saying, Hal, and for sure, those are all things that we take into consideration, and as we're working through potentially having the ability to do a little more help for the parishes, I've got that noted. Yeah. Looks like that may be. Oh, I see a question about what should be included in the monthly treasurer's report. So generally, that's going to be a review of the financial statements every month. Ideally, you'd have somebody, your treasurer, reviewing your reconciliations. So, theoretically, you'd be doing reconciliations on all of your accounts, any account that you have every month, looking at your financial statements to make sure that things have been booked appropriately to the right accounts. However, you've got your chart of accounts set up, and your treasurer should be reporting out the activities for the month, that type of thing. And so the vestry can see the financial statements and potentially ask questions if there's, anything out of the ordinary. A good rule of thumb, and I'll just say this may be a little bit more than we need in this moment, but one of my favorite tools when reviewing financial statements when I'm looking at like our revenues and expenses is if you have a budget to actuals in this moment, where are you at against the budget? That's a good way to see, are we, geez, our electric bill is way high this month or way low. It's one good tool. So just those types of things that your treasurer might be reporting out as to why some of your numbers might differ, those types of things. Anything else you'd recommend in that report, Father Derek?
Yeah, I think you hit the major ones. One other thing that I always like to see is some comment about historic trends. Like, this year seems to be unusual. Over the last 5 years of data, we averaged $50,000 in this category, and now it's 100,000 or whatever the number is. Right. Some comment about that. So having something that helps report some of that trending in the report is always very helpful.
Yeah.
Could I? That was my question. I guess I need a little. I need a little more clarity. I heard a budget versus actual. I heard historic trends, but I guess I need a list to give my treasurer to say this is what we need.
Sure. Yeah, Teresa, why don't I call you this week? We can walk through some of that.
Okay.
And then if there are others on the call that have a similar question, please, I'm happy to, also work with you on that. But yeah, let's. Teresa, why don't I give you a call this either tomorrow or Friday, and if you're around, you tell me when you're available, and I'm happy to give you a call, and I'll kind of walk you through the things that that you should be looking for, that your treasurer should be looking for in reporting.
I'll send you an email about times.
Right. Perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, Hal. I see your hand.
Yeah, Sarah. I'm sorry I've been so verbal this evening,
That's
but
why we're here.
I'm going to put my plug in again for a treasurer session at convention. I think there's so much stuff that we could discuss and go over and see examples of and learn from to facilitate the jobs that everybody does in their parish. That it's a real opportunity, and I would again put a plug in for it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And, one of the things, and I'll say this out loud here, and you all can hold me to it, but one of the things that I considered this session to be sort of our first one this year, but having more information sessions on things. And as you all ask these wonderful, great questions, that tells me what direction to sort of move some of those in to make sure that we're getting you all the right kind of information and assistance. So again, I will say, my email, my phone is always open. So please, if you're thinking of things along the way as you're doing your daily work, or you're working through your audit or through other things, and questions come up like this, please reach out to me anytime. And I'll do what I can to assist in any way. And if you're like, hey, I really would love a training on records retention or something as you're going through, that's really helpful for me to know, so that I can target the types of things that we're putting out there for you all to make it actually helpful to you. So Ben, I see your hand again.
Okay, before I get to my question, let me quick add a suggestion on Hal's point. In West Michigan, when we had a bishop, we had in February, usually after vestry meetings, was and it was in 4 different regions, bishop leadership Saturday. Yep. And so then in the afternoon, you had a couple of different breakouts. Well, that would be an opportunity for treasurer financial breakout.
Yeah.
We did it a few times, but I can see where
I ran a few of those sessions, so I know what you're talking about. Yes.
Okay.
And yeah, those were great opportunities. And that's why I'm hoping to not only, I can't speak for the rest of the staff and promise you that, we'll have those whole day sessions. It's a possibility, and I'll definitely bring this back to staff, but finance and benefits will be, I'm hoping to be doing these more often, also on a at least quarterly basis, to get you all as much information on a regular basis as we can of this type of thing. So yeah, it's a great suggestion, Ben. Did you have a question?
Well, so my question was, and I don't want to belabor, we've been a little over an hour, but
sure.
what's kind of the background criterion that led to the 3 5-year requirement?
So, yep, I know. So switching a reviewer every 3 to 5 years, or doing, is that what you're asking?
Well, I can kind of understand switching the reviewer. I guess that brings independence, but I think, is there a CPA requirement in there?
Let me pull that chart back up. So CPA required anytime if you're calling a new rector, for sure, you want to have that CPA audit. And then for parishes that have annual revenue or investments of 500,000 plus, you need to have a CPA audit every third year. And part of that reasoning is, and Derek can step in as well, but is because of the level of income and investments that you have requires that little bit higher level of ensuring you're having that higher level of look at your books. Does that hit it correctly, Derek? I see you shaking your head. Yeah. So does that make sense, Ben? Did that answer your question?
It's all about risk.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, I guess.
Yeah. Feel free to clarify. Yeah.
Well, and maybe I'm overreacting, but it's just that people have CPA audits build up in their mind as something magical. They aren't really forensic, and they will tell you that. And,
yeah.
if you need a forensic audit, that's going to cost you.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah. I understand.
I like the 5-year. I don't like the 3-year from the standpoint of cost. Anyway, but sometimes just to put everybody's mind at ease, I guess you just bite the bullet and do it.
Yeah.
All right. Exactly. Thanks.
Thank you. Let me check the chat. I see Ellen Schrader, who is one of the co-presidents of our standing committee, who's going to take the covenant question and some other things back. Thank you for that, Ellen, and thanks for putting that comment there. I didn't see your face, so welcome. Yeah, the leadership meetings were really good. I don't see any other questions in the chat. Does anybody have any other questions this evening for us that you'd like to ask before we close? Seeing none. Well, I thank you all for being here this evening, to see so many of you engaged in this process and being here and asking all of these great questions. It's really wonderful, and I appreciate all of the time that you take to do this and all of the work that you do for your parishes and for our diocese, and I'm grateful to work with each of you. Again, please know that me and my office are always available for any questions, comments, help, anything that we can do. Please reach out anytime. And happy to do what we can, and I look forward to working with each of you. If you think of any questions after this, again, you've got my contact information, and I will close there and wish you all many blessings and a good evening. Good night, everybody.